Spooky season is here, which means it's finally time to share my Halloween TBR with you. Halloween and fall, absolutely my favorite season, my favorite holiday, so I have been saving up quite a few books. I have shared my fall TBR in the past, and I have been reading a lot of those books. But these books are very Halloween centered, so they just take place around Halloween or October leading up to Halloween. I have books that are cozy mysteries because I really love cozy mysteries this fall. I have a couple of romances, some middle grade, but a lot of this is all of my scary, spookier books. I don't read a lot of like really gory or some books that are really way too intense, so this should be pretty good for a lot of people. I think they really embody the spirit of the season. So I will split them up into categories. I don't want to talk too long at the beginning because I just want to go into it. But I definitely have a little bit for everyone, so just skip through the chapters based on all of the recommendations that I have. So I'm going to be starting with my cozy mysteries first. If you've been here, then you know that I really like cozy mysteries, especially during like fall and winter months. There's just something about like small towns and the festivals and the descriptions of like foods and treats and recipes that all really like make a season for me. I think it's really fun, and they put me in a really great mood. And I also think that having some lighter books between some of my scarier, spookier reads will be a really great thing as like kind of like a palate cleanser, but to also make sure that I don't get into a bit of a book slump. So the first book that I have is Murder in a Corn Maze by M.J. Hartwell. There's a couple of books with this name, so just look for that one if you want to like read along with me. But this follows Iris, who moved back to her hometown, and she is a bookseller, and she volunteers at the town's annual corn maze, like a harvest festival leading up to Halloween. And in the middle of the maze one day she finds someone who has been murdered, and he has a cryptic clue in his hand, and it leads to some other like hidden treasure in the town. One of my favorite things to do during fall and especially October is to go to a pumpkin patch and go through the corn mazes. So I love a story that has a fall festival or a corn maze into it, and I think the corn maze will add a little bit of a spooky element to it just because you can't see what's around you. So I'm excited to read this one. I have not heard about this author, but it's been on my list for a bit, and I was able to get it on my Kindle for my e-reader recently. The next book that I have is Sinfully Delicious, and it's book 1 in the Two Broomsticks Gas and Grill series. So I've heard about Amanda Lee in the cozy mystery community for a while, but I've never actually read her books. And I'm told that they kind of weave together, but they're like little cameos almost from other characters. But this one follows Stormy Morgan, who moves back to her hometown after a failed attempt at becoming a novelist. She thought that town was in her rearview mirror, and then it just did not go well, so she comes back and works at her family's restaurant. And one day she finds the town's resident, people don't like him, I'm gonna say, dead behind their restaurant, and so she kind of gets wrapped up into it. She has her ex there. One night, through all of the stress, they drunkenly set off like a curse, so it seems like she has some supernatural abilities that she also has to navigate while there's a murder, and her family gets caught into it. So I love a good witchy story. I did actually have this last year for Halloween. I just was not able to get to it by the end of the month. There was a lot going on, and I was only reading horror last year. So I am very excited to get to this one. I really want to see if I like Amanda Lee's writing because she has a lot of series that I can dive into, and I've heard really great things about them. This one is available on KU if anyone has that one, so that's how I'm reading it this time since I don't have my physical book. The next book I actually did talk about, I think in my fall TBR. I mentioned it a little bit because I was trying to read the first book in the series to get to it, but it's The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, which is the second book in the Paws and Claws series by Krista Davis. This follows Holly, who moved back to her hometown, and she helps her grandmother run the Sugar Maple Inn, which is one of the top pet resorts in the country. And I have been reading the first one, and I'm really enjoying it. I love her grandmother. She's really fun, and everyone that works at the inn I think it's fun because I have a couple of animals, so I'm always going to like books that talk about animals. So the town has a very big festival every year, and they also have quite a few hauntings in town. They're an old town, so there's a lot of stories. So a paranormal TV show is coming to document them. Then a body is found in much the same way as one of the most infamous hauntings in the area. So that kind of sets off, is it spooky? Is it supernatural? Is it an actual person that's doing the murders? I love ghost tours. I really want to do a ghost tour at some point, hopefully this year, because they do have them in the area. I think it's just a really fun thing to do during Halloween, and I honestly really just like the stories behind it. I just think it kind of adds something to it. So I'm really excited. I love Holly's character, and I've loved the way she's grown throughout the first book. So once I finish that, I should be getting into the second one, but I think it's really going to be perfect in between my other spooky books while staying like very much in Halloween. I think probably the climax happens on Halloween. So the next book that I have is one of the ones that I got from my library, a nice hardcover, and that's Death Overdue by Alison Brooks, and it's a haunted library mystery. So I love the library, obviously. I've been using my library like nobody's business, especially since I've gotten here. It's about our main character named Carrie, who moves to Connecticut, and she ends up taking a job as the head of programs and events at the local library that's supposed to be haunted by a librarian who had died years prior. So as part of her first event, the detective that worked on her case, who's now retired, comes and says that he believes he knows who murdered Laura, who was the dead librarian. And so he invites everyone to come and talk about stories about Laura, and then he ends up dying in the middle of it. And the police determine that it's from poison. So Carrie feels very responsible for his death, and so she's determined to discover who killed him, and also who possibly killed Laura, who is still lingering around the library, but she's very helpful and knowledgeable apparently. So I'm curious to see. I've read The Ghost of Marlowe House before, and that has a character who is a ghost who is really, really entertaining to read about. So I'm hoping that I like this one. I always love librarians, so I definitely think this is going to be a fun book to read. Alright, so the last book, which is actually my other book that I got from the library in my cozy mystery category, is Scared Stiff by Annalise Ryan. So the first book is Working Stiff. I started reading it and I really did like it, but I was kind of stressed out, and a lot of these cozy mysteries you don't exactly have to read in order. So I think I'm just going to dive into this one because it's set around Halloween. But I really liked the main character, whose name is Maddie, who started a position as a deputy coroner. So it is a very different type of main character. The main character runs a bookstore or a bed and breakfast or like a cafe, and I always like that. I don't really it's really fun to read about. I'm also read the Witch City mysteries, and she's like a TV producer, so it does give a little something different to the story. This is very different. I really did enjoy it. It wasn't it's not too gross, honestly. They don't go into too much detail, but it is a different type of cozy mystery, I feel like. And I have read A Death in Door County by Annalise Ryan, and I really, really enjoyed that series. So I'm curious to see something that's more of a cozy mystery. But this is about Maddie, who's a deputy coroner, and she gets called to the home of somebody that lives in town that's decorated to the nines for Halloween, and amongst all of the gory display, there's an actual dead body. And then somebody that they know gets a bit wrapped into it, and so she's determined to help solve the case. It definitely takes place around Halloween, and I think it's going to be a very different type of cozy mystery read, maybe a little less lighthearted than the other ones, but still not like a spooky book. Alright, my next category is romance. I love some lighter books between all of my other books, and that don't involve like murder or anything. So I decided to put a couple of romances in here. They're very set during Halloween. I think like cozy mysteries are atmospheric, there's festivals, there's a lot of like descriptions of them doing things related to fall, so I think they're perfect. I have like a few of them on my list, and I do have, I think I have 2 of them. Yes. So first up is My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. I do have this from my library. I have this at home, and I really wanted to get to it last year, but again, I was in my spooky mood. So I've heard good things about this one, but it follows Cassie, who is an artist, but it doesn't really pay the bills, so she's struggling to have a place to stay, and she gets an opportunity to rent this beautiful, very cheap flat in Chicago that comes with a roommate, and his name is Frederick Fitzwilliam. And it seems almost too good to be true, but she doesn't really have the ability to turn it down. And he is very odd when she moves in. He sleeps only in the daytime, and he just has some oddity. But he also leaves her really wonderful notes. He loves her art. But when she finds blood in his fridge, then she has some questions. So I don't really know anything more about this book, just that it's really funny and hilarious, and that it's just like a fun little rom-com. I don't think it will take me too long to read, but I think between my scary books, these will be really great. Like palate cleanser, just something to have fun with and laugh about. And the same with my next book, which is Best Hex Ever by Nadia Alfalsi. I have not heard really much of anything. I think this is a newer book. I don't really know for sure, but I did see it when I was at this actually is one of the ones that I own now, but I saw it when I was at the bookstore not too long ago, and I thought it looked fun, and it takes place, like one of the big things that happen in the books takes place on Halloween. But it follows Dina, who is a skilled kitchen witch, and she runs a London cafe, and she wants to be in love, but she has very bad luck when it comes to it, just because someone had placed a hex on her. Whoever she's in a relationship with gets extremely bad luck, so she doesn't really try anymore. However, she becomes the maid of honor in one of her friend's wedding, and the groomsman that comes, Scott, who also had a very bad history with love, he returns and ends up falling very hard for her, and her as well. But she realizes that the hex is going to be quite a bit more dangerous for him, so they have to try and break this hex. I think that this one has more like Indian wedding elements to it. I think it's going to be a little bit different, and there's like a Halloween ritual that goes on, but yeah, I'm really excited to read about that one. And the next book that I've got is A Dark and Secret Magic by Wallace Kenny. I have seen it for a long time, and I really wanted to read it, but it follows Kate, who is a hedge witch, and she lives a very secluded life, and that's fine with her. But one day, her sister, Miranda, asked her to set up the Coven's annual Halloween festival. She agrees to do that, but it's very pressure-filled, and then the bane of her existence, somebody that had burned her in the past, comes, and she has to deal with him there, and the trust issue. So I think this book is a little bit more of a romantasy, but she also then finds a very dark tome that is related to her mother somehow, and she realizes her mother might not have been who she thought she was, so she has to tend with that one as well. So I think that this one is going to be a little bit of a darker romance, but I have read from some of the reviews that they have a very interesting relationship, and it's very cute but also very intense at some point. So that one is more of a priority to me. I have been wanting to read this for a while, so when I got the opportunity to buy it, then I'm really going to dive into that one. And a book that I might get to, but I don't know for sure, is Hex Appeal by Kate Johnson. I don't actually own this one at home, but I've seen it and I have been wanting to read it for a little bit. But it follows Essie, who lives in this house that changes in Essex, and there are all of these witches that are kind of stuck in time. There's one that was hanged in the 1700s and another one that constantly casts fertility spells, but it's about the only place that makes her feel welcome, until Josh, the landlord, cluelessly stumbles in after he realizes that people have not paid rent since the 1700s. And he starts to find out all the weird things about the residents of Beldam House, and then some curse comes and complicates matters even more. So I think this one it's a little bit similar to the book that with Wallace Kinney's book, but I think it's going to be very lighthearted, and Josh's character sounds very entertaining, honestly. So those are my romance books. Now I'm going to go into middle grade. I have talked about middle grade before, but I think middle grade is absolutely perfect for this time of year. They are very cozy and atmospheric. Even the scary ones, I think, are just the right amount of spooky and wonderful, that even if you don't like horror books, it's a really great way to read a spooky book without anything too intense or too scary. And this year I actually have two that I want to read. First being The Halloween Moon by Joseph Fink. So I saw this a while ago and I finally was able to get it in time. This has been on hold since I've been here. But it is about Esther, who absolutely adores Halloween, and she spends so much time picking out her costume, and she just absolutely loves the season. But this year her parents think that she's getting a little bit too old, so she's trying to make it as fun as she can, because it might be the last time she can do it. But when she goes out Halloween night, nobody's answering their doors. The moon is a very weird shade of orange, and it seems like no one's awake except for a very small, unlikely group of other children, and they have to figure out what's going on before the entire town disappears. I think this one's going to be really cute and creepy and just fun. And the next book that I've heard about for years, The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. So he writes some adult books, but this is his younger books. I think it's supposed to be for 8-year-olds. It's a very short book. It's like a short little novella, and it'll be good between all of my other books. This is about Halloween night, where 8 trick-or-treaters gather together at this haunted house. But then something whisks their friend Pip away, and they have to follow this creature, and they go through time to all of these like historical Halloween hauntings and festivals. And so I heard this was really, really interesting and very cute, and they talk a lot about Halloween traditions in other cultures, so I think it's going to be really fun. Really short read, but I've heard nothing but good things about Ray Bradbury. Everyone says, like, October Boy and some of his other books are absolutely wonderful. They are one of my favorite genres, but I have read a lot of them, so this year I picked a few less to read so I can focus more on horror books. I have not read as many this year, so I have quite a big stack of them, and I think nothing sets the mood for October and Halloween more than scary books, especially ones that are set around Halloween. And the first two that I have to talk about are not adult horror. These are more YA. I've said it before, but I don't typically read YA. However, these ones have been on my list for a little bit, and I own both of them, and I really do want to read them. And they're set around Halloween or have a Halloween vibe, so I definitely want to read them this month. The first being The Wicked Deep by Shea Earnshaw. In the 1800s, there was these 3 sisters that were very beautiful but very misunderstood, the Swan Sisters. And then a year later, the townspeople execute them for witchcraft. So now every year, 3 troubled girls get overtaken, and they lure 3 boys to the harbor to die as they died. Until this year, where Penny, who's a young local girl, realizes that this young boy who is new to town has stumbled in on the exact day that he shouldn't. And so she tries to protect him, which leads to her possibly being under threat, and the townspeople starting to devolve around her into insanity. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting book. I always found the Salem witch trials and everything so creepy, so a lot of my books during this month, I guess, have a lot to do with that. So I didn't realize until I was making my list, but I think it's kind of creepy and interesting. And I have heard good things about Shea Earnshaw's writing, so I'm curious to see and to test it out. But I think it takes place at the end of summer, so that's one of the books that actually doesn't take place during Halloween. But the next book that I have does, and that is The Haunting by Natasha Preston. This is also a YA book. I have seen Natasha Preston's books all over, but I've never actually read one, and I was able to pick this one up. And I didn't realize that it took place during Halloween until I was kind of looking through everything. It follows a young girl whose ex-boyfriend's father was arrested the Halloween before after a lot of murders had taken place. Parents want her to have nothing to do with him. She is trying her hardest to stay away from him and also enjoy the Halloween season, but one day she goes to try on Halloween outfits and finds a body that has been murdered. And everyone thinks it's Nash and his sister because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree sort of thing, but then all these bodies start piling up and Penny thinks that the killer is somebody that nobody would expect. So it definitely takes place around Halloween. I think the whole serial killer aspect will be a bit different, especially that it has to do with like teenagers, like a slasher sort of thing. But I don't think it's too like gory or intense just because it is YA. But we will see. I'm curious to see if I like her writing because she has a lot of other kind of like shorter, spookier books. So I think it'll be interesting to explore. The next book that I'm very excited to read is Horseman by Christina Hendry. It is a tale of Sleepy Hollow. So I have read a Christina Hendry book before. I read Near the Bone and I actually thought it was very interesting and I really liked it. And this one, I love Sleepy Hollow. I think it's a wonderful, creepy story. I've always loved the movie. But this one, it takes place in Sleepy Hollow, and it's the grandson of Brom, who was actually there when the events transpired. Everyone in town say that it's just a story and it's not to be believed. But Ben and his friends love to play Sleepy Hollow boys in the woods, and then one day they find somebody that has had their head cut off, and they're wondering if the story is actually true or if there's something darker that lives in the woods. I think her storytelling is so different. I thought Near the Bone was going to be one thing, but it was a lot different, very intense, but it still sticks with me. I still remember quite a bit of that book. So I think that she's just a really, really great storyteller, and I'm curious to see how she takes a story that I really, really love, like Sleepy Hollow, and gives a somewhat modern spin to it. I just think she's so unique. I honestly don't know what to expect. I just think that I will like it. And the next book, which I've heard about so much, is Slewfoot by Brom. This one is supposed to be amazing. Everyone always recommends it when it comes to like Salem Witch kind of books. This is set in colonial New England, and Abatha, she was recently widowed, but she lives in a very pious town which has this legend of Slewfoot in the woods. He is really the only one that she can turn to for help. And the description says what follows is a battle between pagan and Puritan, and one that just threatens to destroy the entire village. So I think it's going to be very different, very intense. I've heard that her dialogue and everything that happens is just crazy, but I've really tried to avoid spoilers, trying to go into this as blind as possible. But I've also heard that the audiobook is really great. I have not been able to get a physical copy or anything on my e-reader, but I am like next in line for my audiobook, so I'll probably try to listen to this one. But I am so curious, and I really hope that this one lives up to the hype. I've always thought the whole Puritan culture, Salem Witch Trials, is very interesting, but also very creepy. So I think it's going to be a very intense, but great read. I hope so. I don't want to be disappointed. So the next book that I have is a haunted house book, more in like the gothic vein, and that is Wilding Hall by Elizabeth Hand. And I have heard about this book for a while. It's a short little novella, and it's supposed to be told, it's like documentary style, and I always love that. It's like kind of found footagey, but I think it's really creepy when people do that. But it is talking about this acid rock band who had holed up in this Wilding Hall, which is this gothic manor that's supposed to be haunted. And they wrote their album, which went viral after that, but the main singer disappeared that night, and so they're going back to talk about what really happened, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. The sun's killing me today, so I'm just gonna have to keep moving. But anyway, I've done my best to avoid spoilers for this one, and I did start it a little bit last night, but I am going to wait just a little bit before I finish the rest of it. The next book that I have is called The Witch of Halloween House by Jeff DeGordick. I saw this a while ago, and I think I saw it on my Books of Horror group, but it is about a house on the hill that all of the kids called the Halloween house, and they insisted that the old woman, who was kind of odd, that lived there was a witch. And that rumor got out of hand, and eventually the townspeople burned the house down with her inside of it. Fast forward a few years, now Carmen is trying to take care of her little brother, and so she's preparing to take him trick-or-treating when a lot of kids start going missing, and there's signs that it might have something to do with this woman. Is she alive? Is she dead? Is there revenge going on? But she has to do all she can, along with some other people, to try and protect her little brothers. I love the brother-sister relationship, and the whole trick-or-treating aspect I think is going to be really entertaining. He has a couple of books in the series, so I'm curious. It's not a super popular book, but it caught my attention, but I don't have it, so I am reading it on Kindle Unlimited, but it is available there. This is going to be me diving in with not having heard too much about it, just like 1 or 2 comments, so we're going to try it out. Now I have 3 more books, and they definitely take place on Halloween or right before it. And one of them is a book that I have been planning on reading for a while, and I really like the author, and that is All Hallows by Christopher Golden. This takes place Halloween night. So this might be one of the books that I read on Halloween night, probably. I read All Hallows Eve last year, and I just think they're really fun. But this one takes place in Massachusetts in 1984. All of these trick-or-treaters are out on the street, except there's 4 trick-or-treaters that are mixed in. And they have very odd costumes with very eerie makeup, and they keep coming up to the other kids saying the cunning man is going to get them, asking them to hide them. There's secrets all over the street between the parents and all of these kids. As I said, I have read Christopher Golden's books. I really liked Ararat, and I've liked quite a few other of his books. So I think this is going to be really great. A lot of it takes place in the woods. There's these creepy trees. I love the trick-or-treating aspect. Such nostalgia for me. When anyone asks for Halloween recommendations, this one is nearly always on the list. So it's been one that I wanted to read for a long time. So I'm very glad that my library had it and I was able to get a copy. The next 2 books my library, however, did not have. I have wanted to read this one for such a long time that I did buy it on Kindle, and that is The House by the Cemetery by John Everson. I believe I have one of his other books. This one takes place at this rundown house that is by a cemetery that is supposed to be haunted by a witch, and our main character, Mike, is planning on rehabbing it to make it a haunted house attraction. So one of my favorite Halloween movies is Hell House. It's like found footage style documentary, so I really love it, and it is so creepy. It has such great moments. So this book, the second I read that synopsis, I was like, oh my gosh, this is Hell House in book form. But he is fixing this house up to be a haunted house, and the witch that's there, he starts seeing all of these creepy things happening, and that witch, she wants that house very full for Halloween because she has plans. So I think it's going to be so creepy and perfect, and I'm so excited to read it. It has great reviews, and a lot of people on Books of Horror said that this was a great book for Halloween. Really hope that it lives up to the hype that I have in my head. I'm trying not to have too many expectations, but I'm really hoping that it works out. And the last book on my list is Halloween by Duncan Ralston. I think I have a lot of books on my list, so I think this list is very ambitious. This one is something that I heard so many things on in the Books of Horror community this year. It definitely takes place on Halloween, but I am a little bit nervous about it because Duncan Ralston wrote Womb, which is supposed to be one of the most intense extreme horror books. I don't believe this one's considered extreme horror. I don't read that genre. I can handle a little bit of gore. I used to be able to handle more, but I just don't like anything too intense. I prefer spooky to gory. So this one is, I have the ability to get it through, I believe, Kindle Unlimited, so I'm going to try it. We're going to see. But it sounds perfect. A lot of people are so excited and say that you should have it on your Halloween TBR. So I'm going to try it out. But it follows 5 teens who are setting out to make a horror film for one of their class projects together. They're not friends. They're all very different. And they all have their own slightly disturbing secrets that are going on. But they have to go to the local Halloween haunt in order to film this horror film for their project. And something is unleashed when they're there, and it just overwhelms the town. And so these kids have to come together with the sheriff and teachers in order to defeat whatever this is. So I'm hoping it is a fun ride. I don't mind if there's some gore. I'm expecting some gore, but hopefully it's not too crazy. But this one I'm cautiously optimistic. I do want to try it. But just like as a forewarning, I believe that that's kind of what it's going to be. I will let you know. I'm going to do some Halloween vlogs. I will talk about it then, probably earlier on. I don't think I'm going to save this one for Halloween night. I'll probably choose House by the Cemetery or All Hallows for around Halloween night, or like the week leading up to it. But I'm going to try this one. All right, so those are all of my Halloween TBR books. I have been saving them for a very long time, and I am so absurdly excited for Halloween. I am not in my house. I have wanted to decorate so badly, but I'm going to try to do what I can. I have a lot of Halloween vlogs planned. I have a trick-or-treating vlog. We're going to the pumpkin patch, lots of treats, lots of spooky reading, lots of cozy reading. So if all of that interests you, or any of that interests you, please subscribe and join me. I will have this whole series going on for the next month, and then more into November, and then my Christmas. So I have so much going on. Next week I will be posting all of my Halloween recommendation books that I've actually read and that I recommend and highly enjoy for this season. So please join me for that as well. Otherwise, let me know what you're reading in your comments. I won't be adding any more this year, but I'm always looking to make my list for next year. I hope you all have a really wonderful start to your October and fall. Thank you again for being here, and I will see you next time.